Okay. Were you notified?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to start off by sharing this graphic here, this picture of this umbrella. And so I just wanted to share that our inclusive practices in Poway Unified is much broader than just our supports for special education. So inclusive practices describes anything that we are doing on all of our campuses to help students and families feel included and part of that school community. So that includes things like universal design for learning, positive behavior intervention supports. Our school, many of our schools are no place for hate campuses and doing that important work. Response to intervention and impact supports at our campuses, our English learner supports, cultural and racial equity work that we're doing. Our high schools have link crew where older students welcome our younger students to campus, best buddies and friendship clubs. Our middle schools have web, which is where everyone belongs, which is similar to link crew where older students welcome the sixth graders to campus. We have co-teaching and collaboration, integrated preschool models, our restorative practices. So I just think it's helpful to remember that inclusive practices is all about being welcoming and inclusive of all of our students and families, even beyond special education. Okay, so I wanted to start by referencing some federal laws that guide our work in special education and guide this work towards more inclusive educational opportunities for our students with disabilities. So first, I wanted to talk about Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA. And that is the main education law for public schools in the United States. It replaced No Child Left Behind. It was signed by President Obama back in 2015. So that helps to remind us that this shouldn't be new work. We've been given this guidance for many years about the importance of inclusive opportunities. And the law holds schools accountable for how students learn and achieve. And it's really focused on equal opportunity for all students. It is not just it's not specifically a special education law. So it's to make sure public schools provide quality education for all kids. It gives states a central role in how schools account for student achievement. And this includes a focus on achievement of historically disadvantaged students in these four groups: students in poverty, students of color, students who receive special education services, and students with limited English language skills. And sometimes we do see an overlap of those four areas in our special education programs as well. Okay, the other law I want to talk about is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, from 1990. And this is specifically a special education law. It was reauthorized in 2004 with some updates and additionally amended and revised through that ESSA law that I was just referencing in 2015. And one of our important premises that comes from this law that guides our inclusive practices work as a district is that concept of least restrictive environment. So this law guides that to the maximum extent appropriate, children with disabilities are educated with children who are non-disabled and as close as possible to the child's home, if not the school he or she would attend if they did not have a disability. So again, it really does need to be very individualized for the student and what their needs are, and least restrictive environment can look different for each child, but this law is asking us to be very thoughtful about these decisions that we're making about setting for our students. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to share, and we've shared this previously, but I think it's very important that these decisions that we're making about more inclusive practices and inclusive programming for our students with disabilities is very strongly based on many years of research very strong research. So this one study on the left here is a 2017 review of 280 studies across 25 nations, where they found a net positive impact for academic and social emotional development for students with and without disabilities. So that's a very important piece. It doesn't just benefit our students with disabilities, it's also benefiting our students who do not have disabilities. And then we have the 2018 National Council on Disability. And that also reported that inclusive education is overwhelmingly and ethically the best course of action. And I have this quote up here by Nicole Eretix: inclusive classrooms support the abilities and recognize the possibilities of all students. So it's about customizing that experience based on individual students' strengths and areas of need, so that we're honoring those strength areas as well. So some of the key benefits that have come out of these studies about inclusive education, and also through our own experiences with our own school sites who've been practicing inclusive practices, is diversity and differences become more appreciated and less different. There are positive social benefits to all students. Students learn to better relate to a variety of people. And this is an important skill they will need as adults out in the community, out in the world, in jobs, in college and vocational programs. They're going to be with a variety of people. There's a reduced stigma. Everyone is viewed as having unique learning strengths and needs. And it increases access and preparation for diploma-bound UC and CSU A through G courses. And Tiffany is going to talk about that more later. We see fewer absences for our students with disabilities who are accessing more inclusive experiences, and ultimately better post-secondary outcomes. So we're always, even though I'm in the preschool and elementary world, I'm always supporting parents to look ahead for after high school, and Tiffany very much is in that work as well. So I want to take us back a little bit about some other events that occurred for Poway Unified that also helped to drive this work forward. So at the request of the board during the 2016-2017 school year, the California Fiscal Crisis and Management Assistance Team, which is also known as FCMAT, completed a thorough review of our special education department, programs, and services. They looked at every layer. And as part of this review, they interviewed a wide range of stakeholders, which included teachers, service providers, instructional assistants, administrators, and parents. And overall, when FCMAT took all this information, it took them many, many months to produce their report. They started this work in the fall of 2016, and they finally had this very thick report for us in August 2017. And this is public information. If you Google FCMAT and Poway Unified, you'll be able to access the report. FCMAT described our progress to increase the least restrictive environment for our K-12 students as minimal. And it described our special education programs, services, continuum, and service delivery as too traditional. And this was hard for us to hear because we're very proud of our programs. I think our parents are very proud of our programs, but they help to bring a different lens and that outside lens to looking at our programs. So they were finding that our programs were almost too specialized to where we were perhaps limiting students' access to least restrictive environment. And they made recommendations for us to improve our least restrictive access for students, and ultimately provided these directives. So they said, continue our efforts and ability to meet our least restrictive environment targets that are set by the state of California by maintaining students in programs with general education students instead of more restrictive placements to the extent possible. And then focusing on options for increasing the percentage of students with disabilities who access general education programs while they're receiving special education services. And they gave us this directive that we needed to move forward with this requirement to remain in compliance with federal law. And they wanted us to have a plan formulated and implemented within the next 2 years. So how did we meet that mandate from FCMAT and that recommendation and that 2-year timeline? So we got to work and put together the Special Education Advisory Committee. It was also known as CAC. And that was a work group of more than 80 participants across all stakeholder groups. And that included staff and parents. And that group, out of that group, there was an agreement to pilot a more inclusive special education service delivery model for our students with mild to moderate disabilities. That was the first focus as far as giving our students access to less restrictive environments who perhaps could be more successful with less support and more access to general education. So in January 2019, we had 10 schools submit proposals to be specialized academic instruction, or SAI, model schools. And that's where that term SAI, pilot schools or SAI model schools, came from. So by April of 2019, we selected 3 SAI model schools and began training staff to be welcoming students that next school year in a more inclusive environment. So Monterey Ridge Elementary School and Twin Peaks Middle School and Mount Carmel High School. So each one had a little bit of a different focus in the inclusive work they would be doing. So Monterey Ridge Elementary School had 3 special day classes for students with mild to moderate disabilities called non-severely handicapped. And their class and their programming every day was substantially separate, even though they only had mild to moderate areas of need. So Monterey Ridge's focus was to close those special day class settings and have all of the students served through that program be general education students first, be assigned to general education classes as their home base, and to access their services where and when needed, but not being part of a separate classroom. And then Twin Peaks did the same thing. They also closed their non-severely handicapped NSH special day classes. And Mount Carmel, their focus was on increasing students with disabilities access to a wider range of general education course options, which were supported by collaboration between general education teachers, special education teachers, and instructional assistants. And so by August of 2019, the 3 SAI model schools opened their doors to students. So we had met that 2-year implementation target. Okay. Some of you may have seen this graphic before. As we were rolling out our work for inclusive practices and even the district focus on equity work, we were sharing this graphic, and it's about, if you think about everything being equal, we would be giving every person the same tool, regardless of what their exact need was, which probably wouldn't necessarily work so well. And so equity looks at really customizing the tools that we're providing to a student based on their unique needs. So we very much were sharing this graphic as kind of the visual for this work we were moving forward to do. So now we're diving much deeper in what this work should look like. So that previous graphic, it was about the tools and customizing the tools. So this graphic here that pulls the illustrations from The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein, which is a lot of people's favorite children's book. It really goes a bit farther in what inclusion could look like. So you start off with this first box in the top left that looks at a very unequal experience for these 2 students, or these 2 boys here. So they're both standing under the same tree, but there's unequal access to that opportunity and that experience. And then when we move over to the right, we see, oh, we've equalized it. We've given them the same tool. But you still see that even though they're given the same tool, they're not both having the same access to the opportunity and the experience and that resource of the apples. So then we make it better by having it be more equitable. And we give the student on the right a taller ladder so that he can reach the tree. So we've customized the tools but there's still more work to be done to increase the access to that opportunity and resource and experience. And so ultimately what we're looking for is this last box on the bottom right, where we're designing the system to offer more equal access to both the tools and the opportunities and the experiences. And ultimately, that's what our hope is for what inclusive practices should look like, is giving each child what they need to have access to those quality experiences. Okay, so now we're going to give you a little update. We talked about our history a little bit. So in the 20 to 21 school year, we began communicating and working with staff and families to talk about the need to continue that work across our elementary schools to close the special day classes for students with mild to moderate needs that were called non-severely handicapped. That term felt very outdated. And we had found through the Monterey Ridge pilot school model that our students who had been previously served through that program were thriving with that move over to general education while still accessing the services that they needed. So at the end of the 2021 school year, we closed the remaining NSH special day classes. And the students who had been served through that program returned to their neighborhood schools, and as gen ed students first were enrolled in the general education grade level classes and were accessing their special education services as detailed in their IEP. So when we began August 2021, all Poway Unified Elementary Schools officially opened as inclusive practices schools. There were no more selected special pilot schools. All 25 elementary schools were now doing this work.
All right, and at the middle school level, following the success of the implementation of being a model school by Twin Peaks, we had Black Mountain Middle School and Bernardo Heights Middle School that jumped on board and became inclusive practices schools in the 21-22 school year. At the middle school level, we still had our non-severely handicapped programs at 3 of our remaining middle schools. So Oak Valley, Meadowbrook, and Mesa Verde. And then this school year is our first school year where none of our middle schools have our non-severely handicapped programs anymore. So all of our middle schools are also inclusive practices schools. We're really excited about that. And we also have increased every year the number of co-taught and collaborative sections for our students to access. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means in a few slides. At the high school level, we had decreased and then eliminated our non-severely handicapped courses many years ago. So we had used some of our high schools as models for our middle school, and then again for our elementary decrease and ultimately elimination of our non-severely handicapped programs. Again, the co-taught and the collaborative classes for our students to access continues to grow over the years. We're averaging about 30 to 32 co-taught classes at each of our secondary sites, which is just phenomenal for our students. Of course, we have many more students at the secondary level at each site. We have a high school with 322 students with IEPs. So obviously we have staff to support that increase in co-taught classes as well. All of our high schools are inclusive practices schools, and we are also increasing our access to career tech educational classes, CTE classes, and some of our sites are engaged in supporting our students who are wanting to access the A to G pathway for CSU and UC eligibility, which is great. So with all of that great work, we were really excited to learn that we won the Golden Bell Award in 2021. And here's some pictures of our group from the district and board members and all of our partners receiving the award and the actual award on the left. And this is an award through the California School Board Association that really looks at ways in which districts use innovative ways to conquer their goals, to get through their goals, and also use a data-driven approach. So all of those great pieces that Heather just mentioned helped us help our teams. And ultimately it is our teams, from our instructional assistants to our teachers, to our related service providers, to our front office staff, those first faces when you walk into a school, that really helped us achieve this goal and get this award. It's really every team member on campus, including families as well, that have made inclusive practices so successful here in Poway. So really excited to have received this award.
Okay, so last school year, when we were seeing such innovative work happening across our campuses and realizing that each school site was really customizing and personalizing the way that they were implementing inclusive practices. So when we saw all of these initiatives and this great work and the passion and the excitement at each site, Greg Mizell, our associate superintendent, he invited schools to apply to be considered inclusive practices schools of excellence, to get this additional recognition about the work they were doing. And we had so many more applications than we ever anticipated, because it was new work. And sometimes people aren't feeling confident with new work, but the number of applications we received showed that people were very excited about this work and very proud to show what they were doing at each site. So we ended up only being able to choose 4 school sites, but I wanted to reiterate that the 4 school sites weren't chosen because they were doing inclusive practices better than other school sites. They were chosen because there was something unique about how they were approaching inclusive practices. So our 2 elementary schools that were selected last year as inclusive practices schools of excellence were Valley Elementary School and Pomerado Elementary School. So Valley Elementary was awarded the distinction because they had worked to align their ELA and math master schedules across their general education classes. And that increased the students with disabilities access to that general education curriculum content, and that increased rigor and that ability to participate in those academic conversations with academic vocabulary with their peers, while still allowing them to access the special education service time that they required. And so that allowed our education specialists to work closely with the general education teachers to make schedules that made sense for students so that they were getting the services they need, but they weren't missing this really important content and time with their peers. Pomerado Elementary, their unique focus was to shift to serving their students with mild to moderate needs related to autism spectrum disorder in the general education setting instead of their special day classes. For many years, they had housed the ASD academic special day class on their campus, and they thought, let's give this a try where we're going to have all of our students who were served in our ASD academic special day classes now be part of a general education classroom as their home base. They start their day there, they finish their day there, and for as much time as possible, they are part of that classroom while we're still making sure we give them the specialized services that they need. So that was the focus there.
All right, and at the secondary level, we had our middle school of excellence was Bernardo Heights Middle School, and they specifically received this award because they had such a significant increase of co-taught classes. So really the 2 teachers, an ed specialist and a general ed teacher, truly co-teaching a class. And this was especially significant because Bernardo Heights housed quite a few day classes prior to becoming an inclusive practices school. They still currently have 2 mod severe programs, but they also had 2 non-severely handicapped programs housed on the campus. So really integrating and training and lots of professional learning went into increasing that collaborative approach and providing environments for our students to be successful. It was a journey, and there were definitely road bumps and challenges and opportunities, as we call them, for everyone to grow together and learn and take a couple steps backwards, but ultimately making progress and moving forward. So definitely a model school, and we send some of our newer model schools over to Bernardo Heights to observe so they can pick up some ideas as well. At the high school level, Mount Carmel High School was one of our model schools, and that is because they truly are leading the way with access and support for students with IEPs in the A to G pathway. So those extra foreign language and extra year of math, there are specific requirements, and that's that A to G pathway to become CSU and UC eligible for our students. So truly identifying what it is the students want to do after high school. And they acknowledged and saw that some of our students wanted to go that route and be eligible for UC and CSU, and took the lead and provided opportunities and supported opportunities for students to be in those settings with support. So they're leading the way, and now we have at least one other high school on board and supporting students in that foreign language component as well. So thanks to Bernardo Heights and Mount Carmel for leading the way with that.
Okay, so I wanted to share our most current data about our PUSD student enrollment. And so as a district, our total student enrollment is 34,847 students. And so that's from our pre-K to adult transition program, which goes through age 22. And so when we look at our total students with IEPs in our district, it's at 5,385 students, which is 15% of our student population. It's a little bit on the higher end, but not by much. And we've seen a decrease in our total student enrollment, but an increase in our enrollment of students with disabilities. One reason for that could be that we do have families that specifically choose to move to Poway Unified for our special education programming. Okay, I wanted to share some other data with you about the most common disabilities that are served through Poway Unified for our students with IEPs. So this represents 90% of our students with IEPs. A very large group of our students with IEPs, their primary area of disability is speech language impairment. And that can include anything from a minor articulation need, like pronouncing specific letter sounds, to expressive and receptive language disorders. And speech language impairment is considered a mild to moderate area of disability. So the state identifies different disabilities with the categories of mild, moderate, or moderate to severe. And then a larger percentage of our students, a bit larger, 26% compared to speech language impairment, are students with specific learning disabilities in reading, writing, or math. This category includes dyslexia, and this is also a disability category that is considered mild to moderate. And then we have other health impairment. 19% of our students have an IEP supporting needs related to other health impairment. The majority are students who meet other health impairment eligibility due to ADHD, which would be considered more a mild to moderate area of need. A smaller percentage of those students with other health impairment may have more severe needs related to a health need. And then 23% of our students that we serve right now, their primary eligibility is autism spectrum disorder. And the unique thing about autism spectrum disorder, as the word spectrum describes, there is a range. So that can range from ASD being a mild to moderate area of disability to a student with ASD having moderate to severe areas of disability and areas of need.
Sorry, I can't get that.
That's okay.
All right, and within our inclusive practices models, we have a continuum of services within that model. So wanted to review some of those models, and you may have seen this slide before. First, we have our general education setting. And of course, our ultimate goal is to get as many students into general education receiving support as possible. Sometimes we push in an instructional assistant to our classes to help support the students and the teacher in those general ed classes, and we call that a collaborative course, so that we have those at every level, preschool all the way up to our adult transition program even. Then we talk about co-taught classes. So this is a model that we are providing some significant professional learning on right now for all grade levels, pre-K all the way to adult transition program. And that is where we can have a general ed teacher and an ed specialist in a classroom truly teaching together, co-planning, co-assessing, co-grading, truly doing everything together so that they are providing a positive, meaningful experience to every single student in the classroom, not just students with IEPs, but all of our students benefit from this model. And then we have our learner supported sections. So we can see these in many different ways at different levels. We might have a resource room at the elementary level where we pull students out and provide remediation or extra support. We have learner supported classes, so self-contained classes. This could be a special day class. It could be a mild moderate learning supported class at the secondary level that aligns with the standards of a general ed course, but perhaps runs at a slower pace, or we have adapted versions of that general ed curriculum. And then we have our learner supported classes that have modified curriculum for students that may be working on a more functional skills approach for students. So quite a wide variety within each of those models, but available to all of our students at each grade level. And then wanted to share this special day class program and location. This visual is available on our special education website. And you'll see that as we grow through the years, the types of day classes and the number of day classes decreases as our students begin to gain those skills and generalize those skills in the general ed setting. The need for those specialized day classes also decreases. You'll also see that some of our day classes have a disability as part of the title. So want to address kind of an elephant or rumor in the room about these day classes. And there is the rumor out there that we are closing all of our day classes. And we wanted to share that that is absolutely not happening. So what is happening is an increase in the tools and supports and the training that we're providing all of our teachers so that we can provide some of these supports and services within the general ed setting. So what we want to make sure is that there are not students sitting in day classes that could be successful in general ed if the appropriate tools and resources and supports were available in general ed. So what we're doing right now is spending a lot of time with what we're calling co-teaching cohorts and general ed teachers and our related service providers, giving them the tools and supports necessary so that we can, when possible and when appropriate and when agreed upon by the IEP team, have students access general ed as much as possible and make sure our students have the supports that they need. Now, these day classes are still intact and they are here for students that need them. We are still responsible for having a continuum of service options for our students. But what we are looking at is the titles of these classes and the types of classes that we have. So for example, we have day classes called ASD, Autism Spectrum Disorder. You don't have to have autism to be in an ASD class, so they're kind of misleading. But some students benefit from those autism methodologies and the very structured visual supports and services that are available within those classes. So we might see some name changes and we might see some reduction in some of these programs as we move more students to general ed when appropriate, but we will have day classes for the students that need them. We have some specialized day classes at all of our different levels. We have day classes called BASES. You may have heard that before, Behavior, Academic, Social, Emotional Support, for students whose social, emotional, and mental health needs are significantly impacting their ability to access their education. We also have our PAL program, Poway Academy of Learning, and that program is available at the middle school level right now in 7th and 8th grade and junior and senior year of high school at Mount Carmel High School for students who are impacted by pragmatic needs, social skills, and some intrinsic and internal mental health needs as well. And then we have our new Empower program that's housed at Rancho Bernardo High School. And that is for students who are at or above grade level, intellectually and cognitively at or above grade level, but have some mental health or pragmatic concerns. It's very heavily staffed and has the support of a speech language therapist within the program as well. Then we have our adult transition program that's housed at Abraxas High School. We have 109 students in the program, and those are students that are on a functional skills pathway. It's fully community-based instruction with some time on campus to work on goal work as well. So lots of great opportunities throughout the district. And excited that we are looking at names and opportunities for our students to access general ed as much as possible. Wanted to include this data point at the bottom in the yellow box that 14% of our students that Heather mentioned before, the 5,000 plus students, 14% of those students are served through special day classes. All right, and then the components of successful implementation. So when we really sat down with our teams and looked at what has been successful for us and what have been some road bumps and how did we overcome them. It's really coming down to the communication, the relationships with our families, with staff, and clear, thoughtful communication with everyone. So it's definitely not smooth sailing all of the time. And it's opportunities like this where we can get in front of families and have conversations and really talk about what has worked and possibly what hasn't worked and how can we turn that around and make it work and go in the right direction. We also have some great trainings on universal design for learning that have been implemented and continue to be implemented throughout the year, and we bring new teams on and train them as well. We've also lowered our caseload numbers for our SAI educational specialists. And we've customized training site by site. And I think that's a very important role, that it's not a one size fits all model. We all know on this screen what baselines are as we work with IEP goals and really meeting everyone where they're at and working on progress from there. So same things with our sites. We all know not all of our sites are starting off at the same point, and that's okay, but meeting them where they are and working on progress from there. And training on collaborative and co-teaching models, that's an ongoing piece of professional learning that we are engaged in now and will continue to be engaged in for years to come. We also have our partnership with Supporting Inclusive Practices. It's a grant that we started within 18-19 in that school year. That grant provides technical assistance, financial support, and access to statewide free professional learning for all staff. So this has been a fantastic grant for us to participate in. It not only funds a lot of our professional learning for our teachers, but it provides great resources and partnerships with state level colleagues that can come and train our staff and really provide a different perspective for some of us. There's an annual statewide conference, and this is the flyer for this year, May 4th and 5th, 2023. I can't believe it. We're already in almost 2023. Last year, we were really excited. So our fantastic inclusive practices team, for the first time, our COSAs are classified on special assignment. We're able to present at this conference because we were implementing the role of a COSA, which is unheard of in many districts, and really having our instructional assistant staff lead many instructional assistants along the way and help implementing inclusive practices, and how they play such an important role in all of this work. So really excited to have our team be part of that as well. And then we've engaged more recently in a partnership with Chapman University, and especially at the middle school level, we have the SPACE grant, so Strategic Practices for the Advancement of Inclusive Schooling. We began this support in 21-22, and it's a 3-year commitment. And all of our middle schools are heavily engaged in this partnership, focused on co-teaching, collaborative settings, UDL, also master scheduling, which is its own beast when we look at master scheduling and scheduling collaborative and co-teaching sections for meaningful participation for our students. So that is going on. And we also are engaged with Chapman University with a partnership through Thompson Policy Institute for person-driven planning and our work for alternative pathways to a diploma. So lots of fantastic partnerships happening right now to move this inclusive practices work forward. This is just a sample of some of the great work that has come out of our partnership with SPACE, with Chapman, and just in general, our inclusive practices work. This is an example of a Padlet that all of our teachers, and it's a free resource for everyone to access about co-teaching. It takes teachers who have never heard of co-teaching before all the way to the end, number 7, where we're actually evaluating co-teaching that's been implemented for a period of time, and using an evaluative framework that some of our high schools are now engaged in. So just wanted to show some of the great work that has gone into the collaboration and meaningful work with our partners. All right. So as I mentioned, we have a fantastic inclusive practices team. If you have not met them, you're missing out, and I'm sure you'll have the opportunity. We have Megan Gross and Laura Snow, our 2 teachers on special assignment. And then we have 3 fantastic classified on special assignment, Nancy Brendrett, Alex Hatch, and Christina Abzamera. They are fantastic people, and they are just proving to be very successful models and coaches along the way. They provide a menu, as you can see, of support for our staff, and they just disperse to sites and work their magic. That's what I'll say. And it truly is magic, what they're doing with our sites. So not only are they student focused, but they are providing ability acceptance lessons. They're doing academic support strategies. They're pushing in with behavior support strategies. Anything that teachers or staff may need to help the general ed setting be more successful for our students. They're just phenomenal. I can't say enough about them. They also do classroom observations. They will sit, as I said, ability acceptance lessons. They do a fantastic presentation on and read stories and lots of books. I know some of you may have been at the last parent ambassador meeting where they did a whole presentation on some of the books that they share with their students and staff, academic behavior, collaboration support, just a whole menu of opportunities that our inclusive practices team has provided. And then professional learning and support. So we are quite busy this year, and we're excited about it, and we wouldn't want it any other way. We are offering for all of our staff that are engaged in this work, classroom learning walks and job alike visits. So oftentimes we're very focused on our own sites and what we're doing on our sites, and it helps tremendously to go to other sites and observe what's happening as far as collaboration, co-teaching, implementing UDL, anything involved in inclusive practices. So we offer release time for our teachers to go and observe other settings so that they can learn from others and take that back to their sites and try it out. Our inclusive practices team and our learning support service partners are engaging in Engage Now professional learning, and that is taking partners and teams at each level of the elementary schools and moving forward with UDL and how that's implemented and how that relates to inclusive practices. We have our co-teaching cohorts that are going on right now, all the way from preschool up to adult transition. And that is where we're taking veteran co-teaching pairs, new or potentially new co-teaching pairs, instructional assistants, and their collaboration teacher pair. And we're bringing them all together from each site and bringing them in to talk about the next level. So what are we doing now? We talked a little bit, a few slides ago about our baselines. What are our baselines at each site and how can we grow? So we're doing that at each level. We just had our second elementary session today. It was fantastic, and we will run these sessions every 6 weeks. So we're excited to bring our teams back in the winter. We also have an IA virtual learning series. So this has been implemented with our partners from Chapman and the Space Grant. We now have an IA virtual learning series available for our secondary IAs every few Wednesdays. Wednesdays are our late start days, and we invite our IAs to engage in a virtual learning series with not only our inclusive practices team, but we bring in guest speakers and we bring in others to provide opportunities for them to grow in inclusive practices. We have our Coaching for Equity series. So this is not just work that is important for our teachers, our instructional assistants, but also our leaders. So we have our PPAP, which is our Poway Professional Assistance Program for all of our first-year teachers. We have our district leaders, and we have our TOSAs all engaged in with our inclusive practices team. So they learn how to lead inclusive practices, right? So we want to make sure that we're continuing the work and supporting the work along the way. We're also engaged in new teacher and intern boot camp. So this is brand new to Poway Unified this year. We saw that our year one teachers and our interns, which is kind of like a paid student teacher experience, we're needing a little support along the way as far as IEPs, how to implement goal writing, how to progress monitor. So we are offering monthly sessions for our new teachers and interns and providing timely and practical training to all of them along the way as they're becoming the newest members of our Poway family. And person-driven planning. So there's committees at the state level that are looking at the organization of our IEPs and potentially making the transition plan at the secondary level and at the earlier level just more student involvement and making that student more part of their IEP and learning more about the student to drive the rest of the IEP. So we're engaged, especially at the secondary level, with person-driven planning. That's another piece done through our partnership with Chapman University, and it's tied closely to the alternative pathway to diploma, which is coming our way. And then our inclusive pre-K redesign. So we are also engaged in some significant work at the preschool level where we're looking at all of the different day classes and how we can make a more inclusive opportunity for our students right when we get them at 3 years old. How can we make more access to general education available, and what supports and services can we provide within our general education preschool so that our students are getting that access right from the moment that we get them at 3. And then of course our PUSD inclusive practices team is right there in the middle, and we spoke about that a little bit earlier. All right.
Now we're excited to answer any questions. We're very excited about this work, and we hope you are too. So.
Okay, so far we only had one question in the chat, and that was a request to share the pad link, which
Absolutely.
has been provided. So I think that that's all that the questions that we have for this evening, unless either of our chairs would have it. There's one question that just popped up, so we'll go ahead and let Faith read that.
Sure. So a question from Ashley is, I have a question regarding the differences in cultures between the schools. We are at a school that is not as inclusive as the other one. And she also added on, I would like to know what you're going to do to change the culture at each individual school.
So I wanted to share that we find that our leadership is very important in supporting that inclusive climate and culture on each campus. And so one of the things that I was most excited to see, one, the enthusiasm and the energy that was in the room this week of our teams from our sites who came to the co-teacher training. I was very excited about that, but I was also excited to see that each and every one of those school sites, their principal was there with those teams. And I think that is one of the crucial aspects of improving culture and climate around inclusion, is to have our principals on our campuses also leading that work. And I really saw that commitment this week right in front of me, just by the fact that the principals were there and they were engaged in the planning and the conversation and moving the work forward. As far as your own particular scenario, I would really invite you to have an IEP meeting, talk about how can we make that experience for your child more inclusive, really customized for your child, and also reach out to your administrator as well. And then we also have additional resources like our parent engagement liaison, Deb Williford. We have our parent ambassadors for each school site, which are parent volunteers. They can also help you and your child to feel more part of your school community. So we absolutely want to encourage improving that feeling that you have and that culture and climate.
Thank you, Heather. And then the next question we have is from Stephen Clark. Where can an explanation of the difference in special day class programs be found, and what is being done for acceptance programs?
Sorry, what was the last part of the question?
The last part of the question is, what is being done for acceptance programs?
Can we clarify what do you mean by acceptance programs?
Stephanie, you can unmute yourself.
Stephen Clark, I think is the question asker. So I'll answer about the difference in the special day class programs. We typically don't put kind of a cookie cutter generic description about a program out because we like for it to be a very customized, personalized conversation about your child and what your child's needs are. And then your IEP team, based on your child's goals, needs, supports that they need, the type of learning environment they need, it really should be a conversation through the IEP process with everyone's participation to really talk through what the different program models are. Often our program specialists attend IEP meetings to describe the different programs when we're looking at special day class programs. But we are also very happy to answer questions from parents who reach out to us by phone and email. We just want to make sure that we're having conversations that are specific to your child.
Thank you, Heather. And then the next question is from Mikkel. Are there district or school programs to prevent and reduce bullying against students with disabilities?
So, and Tiffany, you might want to jump in on the secondary aspect here. I know that a big part of the work that we're doing with inclusive practices is disability acceptance. And so that's, again, diving deeper on that concept. So we're not talking about disability awareness anymore, because it's one thing to just be aware, but it's a whole deeper level, more quality of interaction to be accepting of people's differences, right? So our inclusive practices team, they have a whole book series about differences in students' strengths and areas of need and how we support each other, disability acceptance lessons. We have campuses hosting disability acceptance days and events. And then as far as looking at how do we prevent bullying, reduce bullying, our district has a very strong emphasis right now on social emotional learning. And so that's across all of our students who have disabilities and do not have disabilities, really looking at how we interact with each other, how we are kind to each other and caring towards each other. And those are concepts that are being embedded through general education, classroom instruction, through character counts at the elementary level, character awareness. Tiffany, did you want to speak to that at the secondary?
Yeah, I mean, that what you said was great, Heather, and that happens at the secondary level as well. I will say there's an additional component that I have seen implemented by our attendance and discipline office, where there's actually a Canvas course available to some of our students who are needing that the other means of correction or alternative discipline, where the student goes through the disability awareness piece and learns, you know, the different aspects of what happens and how that affects students with disabilities and their future as well, if they continue down that path of bullying and just that inappropriate behavior. So I've really enjoyed seeing what our attendance and discipline office has come up with as far as other means of correction. Jody, I know you're on here. If you want to talk a little bit about the parent ambassador piece and what we're doing at the different sites.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go ahead and expand on that. And so Tiffany had shared a little bit earlier that our parent ambassadors had recently participated in just learning more about ability acceptance. And so, yes, at our site level, we actually have a donor that has come forward and purchased a set of, I believe it's almost 30 books that are based on ability acceptance. And so each of our elementary school sites will be starting with those books in the very immediate future. And then we have volunteers who are going into the classrooms to read and assist in the classes on ability acceptance. There's also mini lesson plans that are associated with that as well. So that's another way. And quite frankly, if there are specific examples, and I know we're speaking from a general standpoint right now, but if there are specific examples at a site, and Miguel, I think you're the one that asked the question here, please feel free to reach out to through our parent ambassador, our QR code, and I can put that information in the chat also, and we can connect you with either myself, Deb Williford, or a parent ambassador specifically to help guide you through your individual questions.
I also wanted to share there's been increased counselors assigned to our school sites, more school counselor allocations, school psychologists, and also school social workers were newly added at the secondary level. So it's all those layers to increase that social emotional learning support.
Okay, the next question is from Janen. I have a question about the co-taught strategy, and is the model going to be a new normal? Can we request a co-taught classroom? How is it decided on what students go into these types of classrooms? Secondly, is a teacher's training with special education taken into consideration when deciding if a student would be a good fit for a teacher? Every child is so different, and with the inclusive model, I think it is really important for the teacher to be well trained and a good fit for that particular student before being placed in that classroom. Our class size is going to be modified for additional needs of the students within that class. How do we ensure that our students are gaining functional and academic skills in general education? Excuse me, sorry, the thing moved. General education classroom and not solely going through the routine of the day and subsequently falling behind.
Okay, we'll take that one piece at a time. Okay.
I can read parts of it back if you would like.
Okay. All right. Is the co-taught strategy a new normal? I want to share that at the elementary level, it is very much a new endeavor. So we're being very thoughtful about meeting our teacher partners where they're at in this learning journey for how to do this well. So we want to do it thoughtfully and provide the training that our teachers need. So at the elementary, we might just see co-teaching happening for a particular ELA lesson or a math lesson to start out with, and then growing it from there. And our hope is that more and more teachers are embracing this collaboration for co-teaching, that they also enjoy the benefits of having that partner in the classroom. And like you said, do we take into account the training of a teacher in as far as their special ed knowledge and background when we're deciding if a student would be a good fit for a teacher in general? We do thoughtfully think about teacher pairing staff strengths with student needs. And with that co-teaching model, you're further enhancing that because you have a special education teacher partner and a general education teacher partner, and they both bring strengths and experiences to the table. And then the other part of the question, and maybe Tiffany, do you want to speak to the secondary aspect about the co-teaching and the new normal? I still feel like it's pretty individualized and based on what your IEP team is discussing.
Right, and that continuum. So although co-teaching and co-taught courses are available, not every student needs a co-taught course. So some students may be successful in a general ed course with some check-ins from an instructional assistant to make sure the organization is there. Some students need that level of support from a co-taught class where there's actually two teachers within the classroom. So exactly what you just said, Heather, it's so individualized. And it's also important to know as we engage in this, and some of our sites have been engaged in it for a while now, what those options are at each site and what that looks like. So that's important to know as well. I do want to say that we skipped over a question about inclusive classes making the students non-diploma bound. So I just want to make sure that that is cleared up, that participating in inclusive classes does not equal the non-diploma bound or certificate bound piece. So that is not related to being diploma bound or non-diploma bound.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. I want to make sure we got all the pieces of that question. I think we covered it because it really is based on the individual needs of the student and the benefit in accessing that co-taught model. And then it says our class size is going to be modified for the additional needs of the students within that class. We would not be modifying the gen ed class size, but if a student's need requires that additional instructional assistant support, shared classroom instructional assistant support in the classroom, we would be adding that support or whatever accommodations are needed. So it's not necessarily about adjusting the sizes of a gen ed class. And so the way that we ensure that our students are making progress and gaining their functional and academic skills in the gen ed classroom is through that goal and progress monitoring portion of the IEP. That helps us to keep a close eye on progress and making sure that the setting that's supporting the students' learning is supporting their progress and their growth across all of those skill areas. And again, it's not a one size fits all. It can be a blend of different settings. You can have a student who accesses a general education for certain aspects of their learning day, and they access a smaller, more supported learning environment and accesses some specialized services and specialized instruction for another part of their day. So it's not all or nothing.
Okay, it looks like our next question is from NKIT. For students with instructional aid support in IEP, is there a timeline post IEP when the aid need is fulfilled?
So when we hold the IEP meeting and the IEP team determines that it's an educational necessity for the student to have additional adult support, whether that's some shared instructional assistant support or more individualized instructional assistant support, hopefully the IEP is the team is being really thoughtful about talking through where the student is independent and not needing that additional layer of support, and where the student is less independent and does need that support. So we want to make sure we're being thoughtful about fading back the support where the student can be independent and not over supporting in those areas. So the question about, is there a timeline once the IEP team decides that? So when we're writing that service starts that very next day. And so a school site, while they're waiting to staff that position that has newly been created, perhaps by this IEP decision, they are supporting that service through their existing staff in some way, or through a substitute instructional assistant. And so keep in mind that when an instructional assistant support is offered through an IEP, it's not telling you you are getting this one specific person to support your child every day. You are getting the service of instructional assistant support, intensive individual assistance. And so some people confuse that with it's supposed to be this one specific person all day, every day. And we do find that it is beneficial for students to become accustomed to working with different adults in their environment, just like at home. They have experiences interacting with different adults in the community and in their homes, because that also does help them to become independent.
Okay.
Thank you, Heather. And then the next question is from Christy Marshall. Will inclusive practices be encouraged in the transition from autism spectrum disorders preschool to kindergarten?
So with any IEP team, we should be discussing the full range of program and placement options. And we always start looking at general education. Can the student be successful in general education? And if so, with what supports might they need? And as we answer those questions along the way, if we've ruled out that general education would meet the students' needs, then we would look at other special day classes like Tiffany described are still available. So the concept of inclusive practices is really just really having that mindset of making sure we are considering the least restrictive first, and whether the student can be successful in general education first. But if as a team you're ruling that out, that the student's not ready for that yet and is requiring a more specialized program, then it would definitely still be individualized for that student.
Thank you. And then the next question is from Ashley. Do you have any advice for parents for children who may not be able to participate in elective classes other than calling a meeting or contacting administration?
I can take this one, Heather. Yeah, this is a tough one. And this is where we get into the conversation when we look at the FAPE services page about potential harmful effects and the benefits of special education, and looking at both of those. So at some of our, especially at the secondary level, some of our specialized academic instruction is provided through a course. And that course takes place during the school day and takes the place of perhaps an elective, as this parent is pointing out. And sometimes it can happen at other various portions throughout the day. I know some of our middle schools offer a tutorial time, and they offer a section of specialized academics instruction during that time too. So this is where that individualization piece comes in that Heather was just talking about, and truly where that specialized instruction is needed, how often it is needed, and the amount of time it is needed. And if it is truly needed for a period of the day, then the team has to look at those the pros and cons, the potential harmful effects. If we do need specialized academic instruction for a period of the day, a portion of that day might mean that we're not accessing an elective, which is not ideal. And so I know some sites have come up with creative ways for students to still access those electives perhaps look at support for students at other times of the day, but truly looking at exactly how much specialized instruction is needed. Because we definitely want students to be able to explore electives, which leads to identifying passions and potential post-secondary goals, which is what we all want for our students, right? To work on that independent pathway. So I would encourage you to talk to your IEP team about creative ways where that specialized academic instruction can happen if needed, and throughout the day, other alternatives if possible, where that can happen. And then that follow-up that was just typed, absolutely. So that is something we should definitely be considering. Where could that potential SAI service be provided in a co-taught class? For some students, absolutely. And that might be the level of service that they need. So it's hard to know, because I don't know the needs of the student, but that's certainly a conversation that the IEP team can be having, because we want to give our students as much access to those electives and courses as possible.
Okay. Have we addressed all of the questions in the chat? I want to make sure that I'm not missing any. And then I wanted to, it looks like we have another one. Faith, do you want to go ahead and read this last question?
Sure, yeah. From Stephen Clark, aside from talking to neurotypical students about acceptance, is there anything planned to be done to protect special education children from bullying or emotional abuse?
So I have my school psychologist hat on here, and I am hoping that our adults on campuses are paying attention to our students' social interactions with each other and helping to facilitate those actions, and really stepping in when they are seeing bullying or abusive situations. And so since you have had a couple questions about this, I would like to encourage you to reach out to your school site so that we can more directly and quickly address the concern that you're describing. And I think every day our goal is to be protective of our students and making sure that they feel safe and supported when they come to school every day. So I'm feeling an important urgency to make sure that you are sharing your specific concern, if it is related to your child, with your school site as soon as possible, so that we can have a more targeted level of support or intervention.
Thank you. And then the last question from Andrea. Is it possible for a student to transition into a co-taught class mid-year after the IEP team meets to agree that would be a good support?
Yes, it is possible. So I'm going to take this from a secondary lens. So something that we need to look at, as especially in high school when we're talking about credit, we have to look at seat time and things like that. So we want to make sure that we're transitioning from a like class to a like class. So for example, if you're talking about, let's say, sophomore world history, maybe you're in an L world history and we're looking at a less restrictive setting in a general ed world history that's co-taught, then we're looking at 2 like classes. So it's not a simple answer, but yes, it is possible. I would have to know the details, and I'm happy to reach out and have a conversation about your specifics and whether that would be possible. But absolutely, it is definitely possible, depending on the situation.
Okay. There's another question from Stephen.
Will there ever be a time when special day classes will go away altogether for those 14% of students with IEPs?
So the majority of the 14% of students served through the special day classes do have moderate to severe level of needs related to their disabilities. And so we do not foresee our special day classes going away for our students with the highest needs, the most moderate to severe level needs. So I'm not sure if I can look far ahead into the future, but I know that that's not an interest that we have, to close those special day classes. And as Tiffany shared, we are required to have a continuum of program and placement options for our students with a wide range of needs.
And that's a good question, Heather. No, it's not 14 of the 15. It's 14% of the total population with IEPs. Good question. I thought of that earlier too.
Yeah, that was a good question.
Okay, if that's all of our questions, there's just a few things I'd like to follow up with. I wanted to point out that our one of our other directors of special education, Jody Payne, who is with us this evening, posted a link for our parent ambassadors to get connected. So if you want to take an opportunity to scroll up in through the chat and copy that link. I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that it was there so that you had that opportunity. And then one of our CAC leaders, Rosabelle, is with us this evening, and she would like to give you all a quick informational item before we close out for this evening.
Good evening. My name is Rosabelle Agbayani. I am the subcommittee chair for community engagement, and I wanted to let you know that one of the good ways of looking at your specific school sites and what their plans are is by reviewing the SIPSAs, which is school site plan for, oh my goodness, I always forget this
Student
acronym.
achievement.
Student achievement.
You got it,
I'm
Rosabelle.
gonna post this link in the chat. Take a look at it. It has all of the school sites in there and all of the plans. And I wanted to also let you know that the CAC will be offering an opportunity to review all of these school site plans coming up. So if you are interested in what your school has, you know, the data that has been collected and all the goals and strategies that they have in store for the upcoming academic year, you'll have an opportunity to look at that, give some feedback. They really need that. And you know, our community, our special needs, our kids with disabilities, they really need us to look closely at these plans to make sure that they are included. Make sure that, you know, we're addressing these concerns and that any plans are really including ways that our students with disabilities need to be educated. So your voice really counts. And we have created this opportunity through the CAC. This is going to be our second year. Please look out for that email and please sign up for that opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rosabelle. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of our CAC leaders who are with us this evening, our chairs, Rosabelle, Heather Plotsky, Heather Marshall, everyone who's involved in planning and helping us to use this forum to really improve services for our kids and maintain really positive relationships with our families. That's really important to us as well. And I think that if that is all, then we can adjourn the meeting. I just want to make sure that there isn't anyone from the CAC who wishes to add anything before we end this evening, or any of our directors. No? Okay, well, with that, thank you, Heather and Tiffany, for the wonderful content.
Thank you.
And we look forward to seeing you all at our upcoming meeting.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Have a good night.
Good
Have a
night,
good
all.
night.
Good night, guys.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
I saw your husband at Cahoots tonight.
At Cahoots. Oh, at Cahoots. I was like, where? Yeah, he said that he saw you. I was thinking,
Yep.
Cahoots, is that like a bar?
No, pet food.
Yeah. He told me he saw you. He just didn't tell me where. But
Yeah.
it was nice seeing you.
You guys
Bye,
too.
everybody.
Aloha. Good night.